The first signs of trouble were subtle. Whispers in the wind, shadows in the corners of the healers' quiet sanctuaries. At first, it seemed like nothing more than an unfortunate coincidence. Healers began to go missing, one by one, vanishing without a trace. Their absence was noticed only after it was too late. Dr. Hawk, the world-renowned healer, was the first to fall. Her sudden and brutal death sent shockwaves through the community. The report from the authorities was vague. An accident, they said. But those who knew those who had seen her heal the most severe injuries with a touch, knew better. There were no accidents here. Something far darker was unfolding. In the days that followed, other healers began to disappear in similar circumstances. Some were found dead in their homes. Others were found in the wilderness, their bodies mutilated and left to rot as a grim message. Every healer targeted had one thing in common. They were capable of saving lives, of curing diseases that the world thought were incurable. They had been the last defense against the ongoing plagues and sicknesses that ravaged Earth's poorest regions. Without them, the world would crumble into chaos, and whoever was hunting them knew this. The world mourned Aria's loss, but the authorities were at a loss for answers. The police couldn't find any leads. Intelligence agencies were clueless. No one had any idea who was behind these attacks. The attacks weren't random. Each one was deliberate, calculated. The healers had been targeted. And now there were too few left to protect the vulnerable and keep the world stable. It was during this time of uncertainty and fear that the whispers of a hidden force began to circulate. Rumors spread of a group that had been formed centuries ago. An ancient order of warriors, beings of immense power, who existed outside the laws of Earth. The word on the street was that these warriors had been summoned when the world was in its darkest hours. They had been forgotten over time, but their mission was clear: to restore balance, no matter the cost. But who would summon these mysterious beings? Who would dare unleash something so powerful? And was this the answer the world was desperately searching for? As the attacks on the healers escalated, panic began to set in. The remaining healers could feel the danger closing in, and they knew their time was running out. The authorities, desperate for a solution, met in secret. It was at this clandestine gathering that the decision was made. There was no other option left. The world had to fight back, and the only way to do that was to awaken the ancient force. Dr. Hawk's death was just the beginning. The world had to prepare for what was coming next. A storm was brewing, and this time, the only chance for survival lay in the hands of something far beyond the healer's abilities. The call was made. The angels of death were coming. This continuation builds on the tension and sets up the urgency of the situation. It introduces the threat facing Earth's healers and the mysterious force that is being considered to fight back. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments. The meeting took place under a veil of secrecy. High-ranking officials from various governments, military leaders, and even a few shadowy figures from the world's power elite had gathered in a hidden underground facility. The walls were lined with screens showing live reports of the attacks on the healers. News of Dr. Hawk's death had spread like wildfire, and with it came a sense of helplessness. For once, the world seemed out of control. Leaders who had once been pillars of stability now sat grim-faced around a large table, unsure of what to do next. General Marcus Kane, a seasoned military officer with decades of experience, was the first to speak. "We've lost control. The healers were our last line of defense against the growing health crisis around the world, and now they're being systematically eliminated. We can't just sit here and wait for the next one to fall." The room fell silent. They all knew it was true, but none had a solution. There were no traditional military forces capable of stopping the shadowy group that had targeted the healers. This wasn't a war of weapons. This was something deeper, something more insidious. Dr. Evelyn Morrow, a renowned bioethicist and advisor to the UN, leaned forward, her voice calm but urgent. "We've tried everything. We've sent in intelligence agents, but they found nothing. No trace. Whoever is behind this is too powerful, too organized. She paused, glancing at the other members around the table. It's time we consider another option. Something beyond our understanding. She wasn't the only one who had heard the rumors. As the attacks on the healers grew more frequent, whispers of an ancient order of warriors, beings capable of restoring balance in the most desperate times, began to circulate. Some dismissed it as myth, others as a desperate hope. But as more healers fell, the truth seemed undeniable. "Are we seriously considering this?" asked Senator Richard Hayes, his voice filled with disbelief. "We're talking about bringing in what? Some kind of supernatural force, something that may not even be human." Dr. Morrow nodded gravely. "We have no other choice. The healers were meant to be the guardians of life on this planet, but they've been wiped out. If we don't act now, there won't be anything left to save." It was at this moment that Director Olivia Grant of the Global Intelligence Network spoke up. "I've been tracking these rumors for weeks. There's something to them. The Angels of Death aren't just a legend. They were created centuries ago, a last resort measure when the world faced extinction. The problem is, once activated, they don't answer to anyone. They do what they believe is necessary, regardless of the cost." General Kane's eyes narrowed. "So we're talking about unleashing an uncontrollable force that may cause even more destruction than the faction we're fighting." "I won't lie," Olivia replied, her tone steady but tinged with uncertainty. "There's no guarantee. But if we don't act, we'll lose everything. The healers were the last defense against total collapse. If we don't do something drastic, the entire world could fall apart. This may be the only way to save us." A heavy silence fell over the room. Each person understood the gravity of what was being proposed. The Angels of Death were not an ordinary solution. They were beings created for ultimate balance, agents of destruction and restoration, depending on the situation. Summoning them was a dangerous gamble, but in the face of certain defeat, it seemed like the only viable option. Without another word, the decision was made. The ancient order would be awakened, and the world would wait for the Angels of Death to answer their call. This continuation builds the tension and uncertainty as the world leaders debate the desperate decision to unleash the Angels of Death. It shows the conflict between fear and necessity, setting the stage for the next step in the story. Let me know if you need any further adjustments. The facility was buried deep within the mountains, hidden from the eyes of the world. Its existence was known to only a few, those with the highest levels of clearance, those entrusted with the most dangerous decisions. Here, ancient rituals had been sealed away for centuries, waiting for the moment when the world would need them most. That moment had arrived. Dr. Evelyn Morrow stood in the center of the darkened chamber, a heavy sense of responsibility settling over her. She glanced around at the others who had gathered for this momentous event. General Kane, Director Grant, and a handful of other officials who had been brought in for the ritual. They all knew the risks, but there was no turning back now. If they did not awaken the Angels of Death, the world they had fought so hard to protect would slip into chaos. The air in the chamber was thick with an energy that sent chills down the spine. Ancient symbols were etched into the stone walls, glowing faintly in the low light. At the far end of the room, a massive, intricately designed stone door stood, an entrance to a realm beyond their understanding. For centuries, it had remained sealed, a barrier against the power that lay dormant inside. Director Grant stepped forward, a mixture of awe and fear in her eyes. "Are we really ready for this? Once we open this door, there's no going back. We won't be able to control them." General Kane nodded grimly. "We have no choice. The healers are gone, and the faction is still out there, growing more powerful by the day. If we don't act now, we'll have nothing left to save." With a steadying breath, Dr. Morrow took a step forward and placed her hand on a glowing crystal embedded into the stone. The room seemed to hum with anticipation, as if the very walls were aware of the momentous decision being made. She recited an ancient incantation, the words long forgotten by the world, but etched into her memory. The air thickened as the ritual began to unfold. At first, nothing happened. The room remained still, the silence stretching out, leaving everyone on edge. Then, slowly, the stone door began to shift, its surface cracking open with a deep, resonating sound that echoed through the chamber. The darkness within seemed to pulse, as if something immense was stirring from its long sleep. A gust of wind blew through the room, and with it came a feeling of overwhelming power, raw and untamed. The angels of death were awakening. The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly, and a figure emerged from the shadows beyond the door. It was tall and imposing, its form indistinct at first, as though it were made of mist and darkness. But as it stepped into the light, its true shape became clearer. An ethereal being with skin as pale as moonlight, eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. Its wings unfurled, massive and dark, casting a shadow over the room. The angel's face was a mask of calm, its expression unreadable. Behind it, more figures emerged, each one more terrifying than the last. They were silent, their movements precise, as if they were not bound by the same laws of reality that governed human beings. They were beings of immense power, but they were not human. They were not even fully of this world. As the last of the angels stepped into the chamber, a deep, resonant voice echoed in the minds of everyone present, as though the words were coming from the very air itself. "We have been awakened. What is the cause of this disturbance?" Dr. Morrow swallowed, her voice steady despite the overwhelming fear rising in her chest. "The healers are being targeted. We need you to stop the ones who threaten the balance. We need you to save the world." The angels stood in silence, their glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. They had been called to restore balance, and now they were here. But whether their actions would save humanity or doom it remained to be seen. This continuation focuses on the ritual to awaken the angels, the atmosphere of tension and power in the chamber, and the first glimpse of the angels of death. It establishes their otherworldly presence and hints at the uncertainty of their role in the upcoming conflict. Let me know if you need further adjustments. The air outside the facility trembled as the first of the angels stepped into the open world. Their presence was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The sky itself seemed to darken as they moved, their ethereal wings unfurling like shadows spreading across the land. The city that lay closest to the mountain, once a hub of bustling activity, now fell into a hushed stillness. No one spoke, and no one dared to look up as the angels descended from the heavens above. Director Grant, standing with the others in the control room, watched the live feeds from multiple drones tracking the angels' movements. The sight was surreal, beings of pure power, seemingly untouchable, cutting through the sky with an aura of death and destiny surrounding them. She couldn't help but feel a cold shiver run down her spine. What had they just unleashed? Are they really going to fight for us? General Kane's voice was thick with uncertainty. He had always been a man of reason, someone who depended on clear strategies and tactics. But this was different. These angels were not soldiers. They were something far beyond any human comprehension. "They will do what they must," Dr. Morrow replied, her eyes glued to the screen. "Their mission is to restore balance. If that means destroying the faction that targeted the healers, so be it." Across the world, the angels made their presence known. They didn't announce their arrival with fanfare or words. There was no need for it. They simply moved, effortlessly, through cities, towns, and hidden strongholds. Their approach was swift, precise, and unyielding. They were not here for diplomacy. They were not here for negotiation. They were here to eliminate the threat to the natural order. The first of the faction's hidden bases fell with startling speed. The ground shook as the angel descended onto the fortified complex, sending shockwaves through the area. The soldiers inside barely had time to react before the angel tore through their defenses. There were no words, no mercy. The enemy was eradicated in an instant, their weapons useless against an enemy that was beyond the laws of their world. The base's walls crumbled under the weight of the angel's fury, and within moments, it was nothing more than ruins, dust, and the quiet aftermath of a battle won without a single shot fired. At the same time, in another part of the world, a covert operation to eliminate the last remaining healer, a woman named Sofia Alvarez, was in motion. But before the assassins could strike, an angel arrived, standing tall against the night sky. Without a sound, it unleashed a wave of power so immense that the ground beneath their feet cracked open, sending the attackers flying backward. The angel didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its mere presence was enough to signal the end of the operation. The faction's agents scattered, fear taking hold in their hearts. Back at the facility, the leaders watched the unfolding scenes with a mix of awe and dread. "This is it," Director Grant said, her voice trembling. "They're doing it. They're destroying everything. But how do we control them?" General Kane shook his head. "I don't think we can control them. They weren't meant to be controlled. They're agents of fate, not pawns in a human game." And as the angels continued their unrelenting march across the world, it became clear to everyone watching. The world was no longer in control. The angels had arrived to restore balance, but at what cost? The fragile line between salvation and destruction had been crossed. Only time would reveal the true consequences of unleashing such power. This part emphasizes the overwhelming force and presence of the angels, their methodical destruction of the faction's strongholds, and the growing realization that humanity may not be able to control the power they've unleashed. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments. As the Angels of Death continued their relentless pursuit of the faction's strongholds, something deeper began to surface. The world, momentarily distracted by the power of the celestial warriors, failed to see the greater truth, one that would shift everything they believed. Beneath the surface of the chaos, a darker reality was unfolding. The first hint came from a decrypted communication intercepted by global intelligence agencies. The message, sent by an unknown source within the faction, revealed the shocking depth of the conspiracy. The faction wasn't just a rogue group of radicals. They were a global network, a shadowy alliance made up of powerful elites from every corner of the world. Politicians, business magnates, military leaders, and even influential scientists. Their goal wasn't simply to control the healers. It was far more insidious than that. The faction had discovered the key to extending human life beyond its natural limits. They had learned to manipulate the essence of life itself, experimenting with genetic modifications and dangerous bioengineering techniques. But the key to unlocking their plans rested with the healers. These gifted individuals had a rare biological trait, one that allowed them to heal the human body at a cellular level, an ability the faction sought to exploit to create a superhuman race. The healer's power was the final piece of the puzzle. Without them, their experiments could never reach their desired outcome. And so, they had methodically targeted and eliminated every healer, one by one, in an effort to harness their abilities. But there was more. They had been experimenting on the remains of fallen healers, hoping to extract the secret to immortality. Their twisted experiments were horrifying, manipulating life and death in ways that no one could have imagined. The revelation sent shockwaves through the leadership council. The faction's true agenda wasn't just about power. It was about the complete domination of the human race. They had been playing a long game, hiding their true intentions behind a veil of false ideals. The elimination of the healers wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move to control the future of humanity. Director Grant stood in the command center, holding the encrypted file in her trembling hands. This is worse than we thought. They're not just trying to control the world. They are trying to rewrite what it means to be human. They've been playing God all along. General Kane's expression was cold, his mind racing. And if they succeed, we'll have a world where only they hold the power. We've been fighting for survival, but the true war is just beginning. We need to expose them, destroy their operations completely. Dr. Morrow nodded solemnly. We've unleashed the angels to stop them, But now we know the true danger. These elites won't stop until they have what they want. The angels may be our last chance, but we can't rely on them alone. But even as the leaders debated, the angels of death continued their unrelenting march. The more they destroyed, the more the faction seemed to grow in strength. Their true power was hidden in plain sight, in their ability to pull the strings of the world's most powerful institutions. No one could have anticipated how far they had gone, how deep their influence ran. As the world reeled from this new revelation, one question lingered in the air. Would the angels of death be enough to stop the faction's twisted vision for the future? Or had they already gone too far to be stopped? This part reveals the faction's true purpose and their horrifying plans, which puts everything into a more intense and dangerous perspective. The reader is now fully aware that this isn't just a fight for survival. It's a battle for the future of humanity itself. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. The world watched as the angels of death tore through the faction's strongholds with unyielding force. Each base they destroyed sent a powerful message. The angels were not here to negotiate. They were here to restore balance, even if it meant annihilating the very people who had once held dominion over the planet. But as the angels progressed, an unsettling truth began to emerge. Their actions, though effective, were creating collateral damage, devastating consequences that no one had anticipated. In the heart of the largest city, where the last remnants of the faction's power resided, the angels descended with the fury of a storm. Buildings crumbled, streets were torn asunder, and the skies above darkened as the celestial warriors began their assault. But as their wings stretched wide, casting long shadows over the streets, the human casualties began to mount. Entire neighborhoods were caught in the crossfire as the angels moved with relentless precision, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the suffering of innocent bystanders. Back in the hidden facility, Dr. Morrow watched the live feed, her expression grave. This isn't what we expected. The angels are fighting, yes, but they're also destroying everything in their path. They're not distinguishing between friend and foe. General Kane, ever the strategist, clenched his fists. They were never meant to be controlled. They're doing what they've always done, restore balance. To them, balance doesn't care about human lives. Director Grant stood at the head of the table, her face tense with frustration. But we're talking about innocent lives here, people who had no part in this war. This isn't the solution we wanted. We've unleashed a force we don't understand. The angels may be powerful, but they're also unpredictable. Dr. Morrow's voice was low, as if she were speaking to herself. We've made a terrible mistake. The angels are here to enforce balance. Yes, but balance isn't always about good versus evil. It's about maintaining equilibrium, regardless of the cost. As the realization settled in, a sudden question arose. Could the angels, with all their power, even comprehend the full scope of human suffering? Their existence was not rooted in empathy. They were beings of fate and consequence, sent to restore a world that had lost its way. But had they become something more destructive than the faction they sought to eliminate? In the cities under attack, resistance groups began to form, not just to fight the faction, but to stand against the angels themselves. People who had once been caught in the faction's grip now found themselves facing a new threat. Families hid in the rubble of destroyed homes, watching in terror as the angels' wings passed overhead. They had once hoped for salvation, but now their world was nothing more than a war zone, ravaged by the very force they had called to help. Amidst this growing unrest, a new voice emerged, a healer who had survived the faction's purge. Sofia Alvarez, one of the last remaining healers, broadcasted a message to the world. Her voice crackled through the emergency networks, calm yet filled with conviction. The angels were never meant to be our saviors, she said, her voice filled with sorrow. They were created for one purpose, to restore balance. But balance can't come through destruction. We must find a way to stop the angels before it's too late. As her message echoed across the globe, a difficult truth settled in the hearts of those who had been watching the angels' progress. The line between savior and destroyer was thinner than they had ever imagined. This part delves into the consequences of unleashing the angels, highlighting the unintended collateral damage and the moral dilemma now facing the world. The balance between salvation and destruction becomes a central theme, and Sophia's message raises the stakes even higher. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Sofia Alvarez's message had reached millions, and it reverberated through the hearts of those who had once placed their hopes in the angels. People in the destroyed cities began to question everything. The so-called saviors who had come to restore balance had become just another force of devastation. Governments scrambled to issue statements, but the damage had already been done. The world was divided. In the hidden facility, the Council of Leaders had been thrown into chaos. What was once a unified mission to stop the faction now seemed like a fractured response to a force they couldn't control. The angels, created to restore balance, were threatening to upset the very fabric of humanity. Yet to stop them would mean risking everything they had worked for. The faction's reach was vast, and its twisted agenda continued unchecked. Director Grant sat at the head of the table, her mind racing. We can't let the angels keep destroying everything, but we also can't stop them without catastrophic consequences. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. General Kane, his face hard with determination, slammed his fist against the table. We need to find a way to contain them. The longer they continue this, the harder it'll be to justify their actions as anything but blind destruction. Dr. Morrow looked out over the group, her eyes thoughtful. We can't control them. They were never meant to be controlled. But we can appeal to them. We need to communicate with the angels, make them see the consequences of their actions. Balance, as they understand it, is only one side of the coin. We need to show them the human side, the lives they're destroying. It was a daring suggestion, one that many would have considered futile, but in this desperate moment, it was their only option. If the angels were to truly restore balance, they had to understand the true cost of their intervention. The challenge was immense. Communication with the angels wasn't a matter of simple words. It was about reaching beings that transcended human comprehension. But if there was one person who might stand a chance, it was Sofia Alvarez. Her healing abilities, combined with her deep understanding of the mystical forces at play, made her the perfect candidate to bridge the divide. Sofia had been on the run, hiding from the faction's assassins, but her message had been a call to action. Now, she had become a symbol of hope for those who were caught in the crossfire. A fragile alliance began to form, one between the remaining healers, the world leaders, and the angels themselves. It was risky, unprecedented, even, but it was the only way forward. Sofia's location was relayed to Dr. Morrow, who immediately activated the necessary channels to establish contact. A convoy of armed forces escorted her to a remote location where they would attempt the unthinkable, a face-to-face meeting with one of the angels. As Sofia prepared to speak to the celestial beings, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead of her. Could she truly reach them? Could she convince these beings of fate that their path of destruction was not the answer? The pressure was unimaginable, but she knew one thing for certain. The world's future rested on this fragile alliance. The moment of truth was coming, and with it the possibility of either salvation or irreversible destruction. This part introduces a critical turning point in the story, where the fragile alliance is formed and the potential for communication with the angels arises. Sofia Alvarez becomes a pivotal character, offering the hope of understanding and perhaps redirecting the angels' destructive path. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments. The day of the meeting with the angels had arrived. The world held its breath as Sofia Alvarez, accompanied by a small group of trusted leaders and armed forces, made her way to the remote location where the angels had agreed to appear. The atmosphere was tense, thick with the weight of what was about to unfold. There were no guarantees, only the fragile hope that somehow communication could be achieved. Sofia stepped out of the convoy, her heart pounding. She had seen the destruction caused by the angels' wrath, cities reduced to rubble, countless lives lost. The idea of convincing beings of such immense power to stop their mission seemed almost impossible, but she had no choice. The fate of humanity lay in her hands. The air shimmered as a dark silhouette appeared in the sky. One by one, the angels descended, their wings unfurling with slow, deliberate grace. They landed without a sound, their presence commanding yet silent. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine as they approached, their eyes glowing with a cold, otherworldly fire. Each one seemed as though it was made of the very darkness they had emerged from, powerful, untouchable, and unfathomable. Without hesitation, Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "I came to speak with you, to ask you to stop the destruction. You're not here to destroy the innocent." One of the angels, the tallest among them, its wings the color of midnight, stepped forward. It did not speak, but Sophia felt its presence in her mind. The voice that echoed within her was deep, resonant, and heavy with an ancient power. "Balance must be restored," the angel said, its words like a storm crashing against the shore. "Humanity has lost its way. The healers were a part of that imbalance, and their absence leaves the world vulnerable to chaos. We were created to ensure that balance is maintained, at any cost." Sophia's heart sank, but she stood her ground. Balance isn't just about destruction. It's about life. Humanity has a right to rebuild, to find its own path. The faction you're fighting isn't just a group of radicals. They've twisted the very essence of what it means to be human. They've manipulated life itself. You cannot restore balance by wiping out everything in their wake. There has to be another way. For a long moment, the angels were silent, their glowing eyes fixed on Sophia. The stillness was oppressive, as though the very air itself was holding its breath. Then, the angel with the midnight wings spoke again. "Your words are different from what we have known. You speak of life, of choice. These are concepts beyond the scope of what we were created to understand. But perhaps you are correct. Perhaps balance is not just about destruction. Perhaps there is another path." Sophia exhaled slowly, her hope flickering. "There is. Help us. Help humanity heal. We can fight the faction together, but we need to do it without destroying the world we're trying to save." The angels gathered in a circle, their forms glowing brighter with an energy that seemed to resonate through the earth itself. They were silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the tallest angel turned its gaze back to Sophia. "Then we shall help you, Sophia Alvarez. We will stand against the faction, but not as agents of destruction. We will stand as protectors of balance, protectors of life." The angel's decision was made. And with it, the world had been given a chance, not just to survive, but to rebuild. The final battle was approaching, but it would not be one of annihilation. It would be a fight for the soul of humanity. This final part wraps up the story with a hopeful conclusion, as Sophia successfully persuades the angels to change their course and fight the faction in a way that preserves life rather than destroying it. The battle for humanity's future now has a new purpose: restoring balance without obliterating everything in its path. Let me know if you'd like any revisions or further adjustments.